Hello everybody, I am super excited to finally bring this hardback refillable fabric cover tutorial to you. The first thing that we are going to do is measure our chipboard base, and I do just use a paper cutter for this, but I always switch out my blade because the chipboard is really rough on the blades. I'm going to be making my cover for a standard size insert, and so you see here this dark line that's about 4.33 inches, which is the width of a standard insert, and I'm just going to go about half an inch or so wider. You want the inserts to be able to fit all the way inside, and you want the cover to overlap the insert a little bit, so just bring it out about half an inch wider than the inserts that you plan to put inside, and go ahead and cut out your chipboard pieces. And so the height of a standard insert is 8.25, so I'm actually going to bring this out to 8.5 inches. So again, about half an inch taller than the inserts that you will be using. And now for the spine piece, I'm going to make mine about 2 inches wide. You can do yours smaller or larger depending on your preferences. And then you're going to want the height of your spine piece to match the height of your front and back cover pieces. Using some masking tape, I am going to just sort of create the skeleton of the cover. This is just to hold the chipboard pieces in place while we construct the rest of the cover around it. When you're putting your front and back cover pieces with the spine, do not have them 100% flush and touching. You want a small gap there of maybe like 2 to 3 centimeters, and that's going to help your cover open and close more easily. So just use some of your tape and just sort of, you know, this is just like an aid to keep everything in place, like I said before, while we construct the rest of the cover. After all your tape is in place, go ahead and give it a test to see how flexible it feels, if it opens and closes pretty easily. And if it's a little bit too tight, you can just remove that masking tape really easily and try again with making sure you have a little gap there. Next up, you want to grab your craft paper, and you're going to be using that chipboard cover that we made as a guide. And I leave a pretty big gap on the outside just because it's better to be safe than sorry. So maybe about an inch, a little bit more larger than the cover on all sides, and just go ahead and cut that out. Next, bringing in your base fabric, I'm using this sort of solid gray yarn dyed cotton fabric here, and you're going to cut out a piece that is the same size as your craft paper. This could be approximate, it doesn't have to be like exact. Just make sure that if it is not the exact same size, just go a little bit bigger rather than a little bit smaller. I'm going to be using some paper clips to hold the base fabric in place with the craft paper. If you don't want to use paper clips, I think that some sewing pins would also work perfectly fine. Next, I'm just going to sew the base fabric right onto the top of the craft paper. And you want to start with a back and forth stitch up there just to make sure that the stitch is held in place. And then you can see as I'm sewing here that I'm going to be holding the corners, the bottom two corners of this sort of taut. You don't want to pull it because that will, pull against the sewing machine, but just hold on to it tight and allow the sewing machine to pull those two pieces together underneath the needle. And this, holding it this way is going to help the fabric stay put a little bit more. If you notice your fabric starting to sort of wander around in a spot that you don't want it to be, definitely just pause, keep the needle down through the base fabric and lift the foot and just adjust the fabric and continue sewing. Then you are going to finish this off with another back and forth stitch a couple times to keep your stitches in place. So now you're going to flip this piece over so that the craft paper is facing up, and we are just sort of going to fold this around the cover that we made, and I'm going to be clipping this in place on the front part with some of these bulldog clips. Once all your clips are in place, just set aside for now, and next you're going to grab some medium weight cardstock because we are going to start designing the cover piece. So to grab my paper cutter and I'm going to switch out my blades, and I'm going to cut a piece from this cardstock that is the same size as a standard size insert. So I'm going to 4.33 by 8.25 approximately. And then I'm just going to test out and see if this is a good size for my cover. If you find it's a little too small, a little too big, no problem. Just go ahead and cut out another piece. So now I've got some fabrics and laces and stuff like that here, and I'm not going to talk through this part. I'm just going to sort of speed it up and just decorate this as if I was decorating a regular traveler's notebook insert cover. And it's a little weird because you're just working on a flat piece of paper, but after this is all stitched together, we are going to be putting it onto that base fabric that we just folded around the cover. So yeah, just decorate however you like, whatever speaks to you. It could be a solid piece, it could be anything that you like. One thing to keep in mind while you are decorating your cover is on this side over here, we are going to be covering the spine with another fabric, and it's going to overlap your design a little bit. Now I'm going to go ahead and stitch all of this in place, and again, I'm just going to speed it up for you. You could see a mistake right here that I made. I didn't pull this eyelet up tall enough, and some of my paper is poking through. I don't want that showing on the cover, so I'm just going to go back here and trim that paper off. Once all these fabrics and textiles are in place, I just like to kind of give a quick test on my cover to see how it is going to look, and I am really pleased with the results of this. I do want to add a little like splash of buttons on here, so I'm going to go through, find some buttons and just sort of lay them out in a way that I find visually pleasing. So in the second part of this video, I'm going to sew these buttons on and show you how to get this cover piece onto your base fabric and then attach everything all together, and also finish up the inside of the cover. So that video should be coming probably at the same time as this one, actually.